Well, welcome to another episode of Elevating Laramie with the Laramie Chamber Business Alliance. Today we have Jerrica Becken, who insurance company extraordinaire. But today, what we're talking about is her leadership role and really helping us get Laramie Young Professionals going again. So, give us a little bit about what's your story. I like to ask everybody what their story is.
My story personally?
Yeah, personally.
Oh, geez. Okay. Well, thanks for having me and for being interested in Laramie Young Professionals. I am from Laramie, so Spring Creek Sharks, LJHS, LHS all the way. And I grew up actually, both my parents worked at the ARC, so I kind of grew up in the nonprofit space, and that is where my passions lie. I ended up getting a degree in nonprofit management and working in the nonprofit sphere. And then my husband went and ruined my life and started an insurance agency here in town. So I came over to help him out with that. But I've always been really passionate about community and about the organizations that are lifting up people in our community who need extra support or kind of filling those gaps and providing services. And that's really where my passion lies. And
That's awesome.
Working it into insurance.
So, how do you think that, I grew up in a retail family, so move to sales recs, do the right. Always, there was always something with that. How do you think that? I mean, clearly, and I know, like just this afternoon, we've got the nonprofit fair,
Yep.
which you kind of spearheaded getting that rolling and pulling everybody together and creating that opportunity. But how do you think that, growing up with both your parents working in the ARC and seeing that service to others in a tangible way every day kind of impacted today for you?
Honestly, I think it kind of shapes who I am. I told you I'd cry about everything.
I know, that's specifically why I asked this question.
You should have picked me to be on this podcast. Especially growing up, I think in an organization like ARC that is working with people with intellectual disabilities, you just are reminded every day how important each person is to our community. So I got to see that every day my whole life, and it was just a really cool experience to be able to watch my parents giving back to our community and giving back to people who need it most. And I think that just made me feel like that was my purpose, was to be a part of the community and to, just work with everyone and make sure that everyone has a voice and everyone is seen and that we're all coming together, because nobody is going to love Laramie as much as we are. So we might as well work together to make it the best it can be.
Well, I appreciate that. And
it
wasn't a pointed question it was actually pointed to get us to, I know when we, kind of started putting LYP together.
Yeah.
It was, that we know there are gaps in Laramie, and our young professionals are one of those gaps.
Absolutely.
I like to always call it, it's the college hangover, wake up at 25. I'm in the same apartment doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know where I go from here.
I think that's a great way to describe it.
And that's usually when we see people that transition from the university or other training in town, or biotech or something, and they get to 25 and they're in the same place and they don't know where to go next.
Absolutely. I think that's a really accurate description.
And so, as we kind of talked about that, as LYP was reforming in its current context, its new context, how do we serve that group? So, what are some of the things, that was my why with it. What was your why with we need to build up the young professional world?
I think it was twofold. So I did have a brief stint away from Laramie because I grew up in Laramie and it was the worst place in the world.
Right, that's the Wyoming syndrome. You gotta
totally
get free.
So I lived in Eugene, Oregon for a time, and was part of an organization called 2030 Club. And it was a cool experience because it was similar to LYP in that it was geared toward people in their 20s and 30s, and it's a national organization. And it's really service-focused, community-focused, and it was very rigorous about Robert's Rules of Order in like a weird way. I do remember that. That was a little traumatizing, but
I'll give that a second.
Yeah. So I think that really, to me, was like, oh, this is a great way for us to address that group of people and to kind of provide this introductory experience into membership organizations and board leadership and community engagement in a way that meets them where they're at, not just in terms of professional development, but in terms of socializing. Because, people's in their 20s and 30s are looking for something a little bit different than what you would typically find in a membership organization.
Right.
So that would be one facet of it. I think the other facet was coming off of Leadership Laramie, which is a great program, and especially being part of the group that was in that kind of COVID gap. We were the COVID gap class. Coming off of that, I think I saw a lot of things in Laramie that were really valuable for me in terms of connecting that kind of were disappearing as a result of what our collective experience with COVID. So those two things are what spurred me to be interested in leadership in Laramie Young Professionals. And there was just a group of us, like the board, who helped make this possible. We all had kind of similar feelings of this is an area that really needs support in our community. And everyone likes to talk about the brain drain in Wyoming.
Right.
But what are we actually doing about it in Laramie to try and remind people that this is one of the greatest places to live? And I think kids really realize that. Like growing up in this community, you see it. College students realize that. People who are older and have families wouldn't want to raise their families anywhere else. But there is that little gap where it just doesn't fit people's needs. So that was, I think, what our group was like, okay, what are the pillars of this group that we think are going to really connect with those individuals and provide the support that they need? And we decided on community engagement, connection, and professional development specific to where they are in their careers. So Did I answer your question? Or
no, absolutely. That's great. You actually got to the kind of that pillar talk, because I think going back, we talk about brain drain, and then I think once you make a real catchy phrase, then everybody figures it's a light switch on the wall and somebody's just going to hit it and it's going to happen.
Right.
And what I love about the way that LYP has come together is the action items, right? Like, here are the things that we do. And I love that the board has really taken those things to the programming and the heart of, getting, building people up from where they're at, as opposed to like, here's the, we want you to learn management. Well, nobody's giving me the keys to the door yet.
Right.
So, I love that part of it. Talk a little bit about your board, because it's an interesting board as like the other kind of leadership programs I've started here.
Totally.
I say, make it up and it's yours and take ownership of it, because it's been a long time since I was in my 20s and 30s, sadly.
Not that long.
So to know like where you're at, you can say, oh, when I was 20, I wish somebody would have told me this.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to give huge kudos to the original Laramie Young Professionals group. So, we've kind of talked about this in our membership and as we're recruiting people, but Laramie Young Professionals was a thing before COVID.
Right.
And it was
a COVID killed organization.
It was a COVID kill, unfortunately, but there was a really strong group of individuals who met monthly, and they started the 20 under 40 program, and they were, engaged in having meetings. And so it was a thing. And as we mentioned, kind of died with COVID. And the reiteration, I also want to give a shout out to Kale Palmer, because this was a conversation that we kind of started having during Leadership Laramie. So I was in the steering committee and he was in the class coming in, and both of us felt really strongly that this was a gap area that really needed some love. So Kale kind of got the ball rolling. I was on maternity leave. I came back in and we just kind of had a meeting. And I think Kale was the one who actually initially reached out to the folks on the board. He had an opportunity in Montana and left. So we just started there in that room at the old LCBA building, like, okay, we're all here. Apparently we all care about this, but what does this look like? What does it mean for us? So the original folks are Sina Krula, who's now the vice chair of our board, Liz Powers, who's now our treasurer, Stephen Grand Prix, who's our secretary / board mom. Sorry, Stephen, he's 100% our mom. Zach Fox was a part of the original crew. Who am I forgetting? I mean, Kate jumped in real fast to be the liaison. She's not on the board, but is the liaison for LCBA. And then we had Farron Babbitt on the team for a little while. And then we added Lee Lowry and Caitlin White. And we just added Kira Deakins and Stephanie Lowndes. So that's kind of our board. Did I get them all, Brad? I'm gonna freak out if I forgot someone. I think that's everyone. If I forgot somebody,
we'll come back.
Smack me.
Add shout outs.
Yeah. So just this group that we were sitting there in the less than ideal conference space. You guys have a much nicer conference space now.
We've upgraded.
Yeah. Like, okay, so we all came into this room to have this discussion. And, I think Kale had a little bit more structured plan. And then when he moved, we're like, well, let's just make it up.
Yeah.
And that's literally how the conversation started. So we just started talking about what we wish we had had in the entry phases of our career building and what we still wish we had as far as networking and connection. And unfortunately for the rest of the community, we got like all of the folks who are the serial volunteers and the serial board committee committers. And so everyone in that room was very much like, community engagement and volunteering needs to be a part of this. That is that's a huge priority for Laramie and for our community, and we want young professionals to get involved in that early on, because that's not only how you give back, but it is also how you build your network.
And how you get to know what's going on.
Exactly, how you know what's going on, how you understand the needs of our community, how you meet people that you never would have met otherwise.
Right.
So that was a big thing for everyone in that room. And we just kind of made it up.
Well,
we're still kind of making it up.
I think the nice thing about that, though, is it allows pivots much easier. Right?
Yeah.
So, like, one of the cool things that you're doing, and it's coming up here in a couple of weeks, I think, is the 20 under 40 luncheon.
Yeah.
And so, for some recognition, because I think that's the phase of your career where you're like, I am busting my ass every day, and nobody even notices. That's what I remember about my 20s and 30s is like, I'm crushing myself here.
Yeah.
And I've got toddlers whining, and I've got, and at night, or, I'm trying to date or whatever, right? Like the whole world is going around me, and all I'm trying to do is have somebody notice. So that's one of the quick pivots we did to say, let's get it up and going this year. I just remember when you came to me and said, can we do it this year? And I'm like, sure, why not? I mean, like, I could come up with a bunch of no's, but if we can find a path to it, let's do it.
Well, and Sina Krula gets a huge shout out for that, because she is really carrying our team on coordinating that. We have a committee and everything, but I was on team wait and see. Like, let's do it next year. Let's get through one more year. And Sina's like, no, we got to do this. This is important. And she was totally right. The previous iteration of LYP started 20 under 40, and I'm sure, folks in the community remember seeing that in the newspaper. That is something that's really valuable, and you're absolutely right. I think folks that are in the beginning of their careers and are busting their butts every direction to Tuesday.
Or their butts, yes.
Yeah. Everybody likes kudos.
Yeah.
They like it maybe in a different way, like how you get feedback may be different for everyone. But I think positive feedback is a really beneficial thing to just about everyone in building confidence and, knowing that what you're doing is valuable.
Somebody noticed.
Yeah. And I think what's cool about 20 under 40 is that we took a page out of the previous iterations book, and we have a nomination process. So it's cool that it's open to the community to say, hey, look around you and see who in your circle or who in your employment or whatever is doing a really great job that's in this age range, and nominate them and tell us why you think they would be a good fit for this award. And then we have the second step of the actual application. So I read the questions, and Sina and I were talking about it a little bit, and it's interesting because as you're trying to fill it out, it feels like you're bragging, but that's kind of the point. you should be able to talk about the things that you've done, and you should be able to, take a moment to reflect on how you've contributed and what you've done that's meaningful and that's making a difference. So it allows those folks who have been nominated to take a minute and say, oh yeah, this is actually cool that I was a part of this. And I did work really hard on this, and I was a leader in this space. And be able to submit that to the committee to review. And the committee has a big job to review all those applications because they are kind of
Yeah, I think I had to do like the first pass, and it was a lot. And now I'm glad that the essay part falls in somebody else's lap.
Yeah. So they really are essay questions about your life and your experience. And I think what's cool about the way that it's been structured is, we recognize that Laramie Young Professionals, we're all in the working space. We all have jobs. We're all hopefully getting a paycheck. It's forcing the applicants to look outside of that. Like, yes, you're contributing to your employer, and yes, you are contributing to our local economy and to our community through your employer. But how are you leading? And how are you stepping out of that space to be a part of the community? So your employment is one piece of it, but it's also sorry, I've been smoking for 95 years, so I sound like this. So how are you stepping outside of that to connect with people and network and build your community and give back? And it doesn't always have to be how you're giving back financially, or are you volunteering at a nonprofit every week?
Right.
Like, what ways are you stepping out to make Laramie a little bit better for all of us?
Yeah.
So I think that's what's really cool about 20 Under 40 is it's recognizing folks who are working hard, but who are working hard and going above and beyond to make this place awesome.
What I love about it is it really forces the process that, that was set up for this was really, it kind of goes against the Wyoming stoicism of like, oh, I'm just doing what I do, and
just the grit and grind.
I pick up this thing and I move it over here every day, and it forces people to think about the other places, because it's kind of a dichotomy of Wyoming. We have this grit and grind, and it's just what we do, and we'll do more with less, and we're very tough, and that part. But to say, here's this spot where we're doing good and we're making change.
Right.
It's kind of hard for us, and it's a Wyoming thing, but I've noted it more in my time in Laramie that like you do your role and you're supposed to step up and help.
Right.
And we don't talk about it. Well, how do we get more people to do it if we don't talk about it?
We don't talk about it.
It's a false dialogue to me.
Right.
So I love that the process really forces people outside that kind of stoic box of just doing what I do.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It is something that, maybe there's some obligation that people are feeling, or it's like, I do this, but I don't want anyone to know about it. But for me, the getting involved in community, the community part is what's important.
Yeah.
Like, I do it because I want to be connected to people. And I think our board and our membership are doing this because they want to be connected and they want to be engaged and they want to know what's going on. And, we all have a ticking time bomb. We all are going to go through our life cycle. And right now it's our responsibility in that 20 to 40 age range to take up the mantle of volunteerism and to take up the mantle of community engagement and connection and, leave our mark a little bit and make our community better, just like everyone before us have, and hopefully everyone after us. We're also setting an example for those coming up.
I always like to say shaping the future starts today.
Yeah.
And that's really what this forces, right? Is how do you shape when you're not in young professionals anymore? Right. You really have to shape it when you're in young professionals so that there's a system. And I love the way that the program's kind of evolved and set up to do that. So if you join young professionals, like what does an event look like? Because I know you've got kind of different classes of events.
Yeah. So I think our initial goal was to provide a little bit of variety. I think it's been kind of a tradition from membership organizations to meet over a meal and have a speaker. And those are really valuable opportunities to learn about what's going on. And we recognize that for our age group, that's valuable, but it's probably not enough to get them in the door.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to kind of alternate and provide a variety between those educational formats and more social pieces. And the other part of that is, that 20 to 40 gap is also bridging folks who are coming out of the university or coming out of schooling of some type, getting into a career, and those who have young kids and are starting to get involved with youth sports and do all of those kinds of things. So we recognize not everyone's going to be able to make a happy hour because they might need to pick up their kids, and not everyone's going to be able to make a lunch meeting.
Should probably make the happy hour instead of the kids.
Depends on the day. So our goal was to kind of take a page out of Leadership Laramie's book and have these sessions that were different and that were hopefully exciting. And I think we're realizing we're really going to need the membership to get involved, and we want to hear their voices as to what they would like to have be a part of this, and also, have their hands in it and have them help with the lift. But for us, it started off with, let's alternate between a lunch meeting and a happy hour and throw in a volunteer project every now and then. So we started off with a kickoff event at Bonds, and that was really just we're going to have a little networking bingo game that forces you to kind of meet someone that you didn't know before, but it's mostly an opportunity for us to say, this is what we're doing, keep an eye out for what's coming next. And then we did a panel, but it was geared toward civic engagement, and we asked folks who had gotten involved with city council and county commissioners and even those serving in the legislature to talk about how they started on that path, because people in our age group are just getting started in some of that.
Right.
And what motivated you to want to be engaged in that way, and how did you get started, and what connections did you need to make, and what did you feel like you needed to learn? So that was a really cool way to kind of introduce civic engagement. Our next one was totally just silly. We did a murder mystery networking game. And again, that was just us trying to find a way to connect with folks looking to build their network in a way that was different. That wasn't something that really anyone else was doing. And there were food and drinks, but it was kind of forced teamwork in a really low stakes kind of way. So, and it was a costume party, and we had contests and all of that thing. Then we threw in a volunteer project with Family Promise that was open all day so people could stop in when they needed to. So our goal was really to just kind of show potential members all of the different ways that they could connect with their peers and all of the different ways that they could get involved. And
now it's kind of established, there's networking, community involvement, skill build, right? And it kind of cycles, right? Month to month.
Yeah. So we had kind of our annual meeting in January, and we made Valentines for all the seniors in town. So just a silly little craft project while we were talking, but it was a way for us to give back and connect with each other. Our wellness happy hour was probably our best attended event. So we were at Laramie Fitness. It was at Laramie Fitness, and they showed off the co-working space that LYP members get a 25% discount to be a part of. And then we had the lodge there with drinks. We had High Plains Sauna come and show off the mobile sauna. Give and Receive Bodyworks, and Evan Levi, who's doing some coaching stuff. So they came and talked about what they're doing. We had some snacks. It was just a really cool way to talk about wellness within the professional space and how we're taking care of ourselves and ensuring that we can keep grinding. And
it's cool. You maybe need to do that for a broader membership. We need to have that one.
Yeah. And then the volunteer fair, this is maybe where I was like, this is something I really want to do, and I'm going to use this forum to make it happen. And fortunately, the whole board was really into it. And so the Laramie Volunteer Fair is hopefully something that we can do every year. It's today from 3 to 6. I know this is probably going out later. April 10th at the Civic Center. The United Way co-sponsored it. Turtle Rock provided all of our drinks and pastries, and we have 36 organizations that are showing up talking about their volunteer opportunities, open board positions, ways to get involved. And board service is a really great way for young professionals to build their network and build their skills. And, kind of be enforced, sometimes conflict, sometimes having to make tough decisions, learning about, the business side of nonprofits and how those contribute to our community as a whole, and connecting and raising money, which we all have to do at one point or another. So yeah, that's our most recent.
I'm really excited about it because it kind of takes all of our leadership functions, OYP, luncheon series, and leadership Laramie, and what we talk. We're constantly talking about know what's out there, get involved, step up, and this has really kind of been the missing piece that we haven't had. Is like, where do you do that?
Right.
Once you're out of the programs, because they exist in like a context in leadership Laramie, and if you know people through the luncheon series, like they exist because you know people, but like there's not an entry point, so it created the entry point. So it's already a cool outflow of LYP.
Yeah.
When people so if you want to get engaged, I missed the whole mark if I didn't at least get this part. If you want to get into LYP, so we did do one thing that's a little bit different with LYP, and it's the value proposition, which is there are dues. And I just want to say out of the gate, if you fit in this group, just ask your employer. I'm sure that they will pay them for you. Because, as an employer and, in the business community, this is an identified missing space in our community. We want to invest in people, and we want to invest in people's growth. So ask your employer if you want to get involved. But so I'm going to just go ahead and bite that one right head on.
We can get mad at you now.
Yeah, absolutely. Get mad at me, because I think it's important to assign a value to the programs. Like, I'm getting something out of this. I'm giving something for it.
Right.
And so I appreciate the skin in the game that the board said, yeah, no, we can do that. And I love that. It gives you also some membership accountability.
Right.
So I love all those parts. But if you want to get engaged, how do you get engaged? If somebody wants to come to an event, where would they find out about it? If they want to sign up, how do they do it?
Yeah, so right now we're operating pretty heavily just on email. So our email right now, it may change when we have one under the chamber's umbrella, but it's lypwyo@gmail. So pretty simple. Or on social media. Like, we're pretty exclusively on Facebook right now, creating events and promoting the things we have coming up. We'll have a page on the LCBA website with more information once that new takeover has happened, that will provide some context as far as what the program is, who to contact, who the board members are, and what we have coming up. And to your point about, dues and membership, we did really feel like it was essential for this to be something that was a little bit of a step up, and there to be some accountability. And, we have some membership guidelines and expectations. We have some membership benefits that you get for having paid dues. But we also recognize that this is a group who is starting their career and maybe doesn't have a lot of disposable income to contribute to outside engagement. So it's $20 a month. It's not something that's out of reach. It's basically a Netflix subscription at this point in time. And it's something that can be paid annually if employers would rather just take it over and do it in a chunk. It's something that can be paid monthly if an individual is paying for themselves. But we really recognize that this is a group that, with limited disposable income, we want to make it valuable. We want to make it worth the dollars that you're investing, and have it be an experience that for you pays dividends throughout your career.
I think you've nailed that part.
And then we'll see. TBD. I think so.
I think
our team
I
is
think
the
there's
best.
two great opportunities in that are learning opportunities that I don't think we reinforce, particularly with kids, but then all of a sudden you're in your first job and you've never been taught it, and that's asking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay to ask your employer.
Right.
It's okay to ask for some buy-in. It's okay to make these standards. I love that that's part of what you've designed with the program. So thank you for doing that, making the opportunities to ask, making the opportunities to brag, and really highlighting a way to develop, to develop our workforce. You know, we always talk about resources in Wyoming, and in the chair I get to sit in when you're recruiting a company, it usually is what's your workforce.
Mm-hmm.
And so the people are a real resource in Wyoming. You don't get to take minerals out of the ground. You don't get to do any of that without the people.
Right.
And so how do we build up our people and how do we invest in our people, I think, is something that here in Laramie in particular, our business community buys into.
Right.
Our nonprofit community buys into. Our civic organizations buy into. How do we develop people?
Yeah.
And so it's one of the things that makes Laramie great. But part of that is you have to ask.
You have to ask. And I'm glad that you circled back around to the professional development component. You know, I think as a community can recognize the importance of engagement and networking, but what I think LYP offers differently in terms of professional development is some of those things that are at the beginning stages of your career that you're not necessarily going to get training for. How do you talk about salaries? How do you learn to manage and supervise? Because most of the time we're just thrown into the deep end and like, good luck. I hope it works out for you. How do you learn to be involved on a nonprofit board? Because again, it's something you're kind of just tossed into, and there are some expectations that you might not be privy to until you're,
until you're to the part where it's a crisis.
Yeah, exactly. So trying to find those components that help build a career, how to ask, how to talk to your employer about tricky things, how to manage up sometimes. You know, we're really trying to think of ways that we can incorporate that into a learning environment that's attractive to folks in their 20s and 30s and help them build those skills.
Yeah. And I think that all those are so important. How do you set your boundaries? How do you take care of yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to have people as you move intergenerationally that are like, well, the way we did it was.
Right. And it's changing every day.
Yeah. And maybe the way they did it was, and I'm one of the way they did it age group now, maybe the way they did it wasn't the healthiest and best way. So to allow that dialogue to have innovation and change is super important. One of the things that we've talked about doing at some point is adding mentorship.
Yes.
As both as LYP, but also how do we do that in the business community? That there's mentoring one another in the LYP context, but then there's how do we start creating that intergenerational gap deal? And I don't know that we have answers, but talk a little bit about what doing the next level of how do we create that connection, a broader connection in the community.
Yeah, and I think that's something, that we're still figuring out. With LYP, for the time being, we've focused a little bit more on peer-to-peer mentorship, just in talking to people who are in the same space as you and saying, oh, this is the problem that I'm dealing with. How did you deal with it? But ultimately, the goal is to have that opportunity to branch off and say, okay, LYP has provided me some really great experience and some really great connections, but what I really need to do is talk to someone who has been in my shoes before and who has been through my respective ladder of experience that I can draw on their experience and help grow my skills. So I would say that is a priority for the program and for LCBA, and that is maybe a larger partnership of how we're connecting the leadership series and Laramie Young Professionals and Leadership Laramie to meet those, and especially with the really wide and broad membership that LCBA has, there's so much experience in our community that's really valuable to folks who are building their careers, and it would be great to try and find those connections. So
we'll keep working on it. I mean, mentorship was always weird to me because I never wanted to, hey, will you be my mentor? Like that question
it's a hard
is
question
always an awkward one. And then how's that defined? So my mentors have always been people that have been my mentors, but we've never defined it.
Right.
And how do you create the opportunities to have both kind of that organic mentoring
Mm-hmm.
and the very committed mentoring?
Right.
And
And
so,
that's potentially a really good future program for LYP is like how to identify a potential mentor, because it's got to be someone who has the experience you need, but also it's a very personal relationship. So how do you recognize somebody who could provide you that experience and skill set that you connect with on a personal level, and then how you approach them about it?
yeah,
How do you have that
always been
conversation?
awkward for me.
It's awkward. Yeah, it's
No,
like
I don't
asking
like
someone
it.
out on a
I
date.
don't like it.
Yeah.
It's more like asking them to marry you, but we haven't
Maybe
been
a
on
little
a
bit.
date.
Like love is blind kind
Like,
of
hey,
thing.
I want you to be entirely invested in me, but
Yes.
we don't know each other. That's cool though.
And I think that's sometimes where those sort of assigned programs fall short.
Mm-hmm.
Is it's great in theory, but if you don't connect with someone on that personal level, it's really hard to maintain a mentorship outside the confines of the program, the limitations of time.
It really is. So going from that's one of the kind of where this goes from here.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that you would kind of leave us with, and what's next besides signing up and getting involved?
I mean, definitely sign up and get involved. This is an ongoing membership program, and the only way that we're going to continue to build is by spreading the word and inviting people and continuing to have activities that are exciting. I think what I would like to reiterate is that this is not a board driven program. The board came together organically, and we tried to build something off the foundation of the previous program that felt good to us and made sense to us. But our board already has term limits. We'll have new folks coming in. We want to hear from the membership about what they think would be valuable. We want to know about opportunities for growth and engagement that we wouldn't have otherwise known. So we want our membership to have a voice and to be involved and to help us plan and to help us organize, because we're all very familiar with the burnout problem. So ultimately our board can't organize every single event or we're going to burn out. So having the membership engaged is super, super important to us. And I would say the other thing I would really like for people to know about this is we're still learning. This is a brand new, not a brand new program, but it is a rebirth. It is something that is always evolving and shifting and pivoting to accommodate different needs and different interests. So we're not perfect. We're still trying to figure out how to take dues, for heaven's sakes, or to promote membership.
Hey,
so
that's a bigger logistical concern than what I'd know.
Yeah, exactly. So we're definitely learning, but feedback is incredibly important, and feedback that is backed by action, I think, is really valuable.
I love that you set up a program and that was really what I was trying to get you to, is it's set up to evolve.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not LYP that isn't the LYP that is, but it's the backbone to develop, the under 40 skills and development, which is essential to our community to be able to continue to grow. And I love that the way that you've kind of structured it has the board is there to facilitate.
Right.
It's also meant to be a living organization and rotate on, rotate off, term limits, but it's really that part where you said, we want to go to the members and find out what issues are barking at them right now.
Right.
And get that into the training, into the networking, into the development and engagement pieces as quick as possible. So the board kind of facilitates the seeing needs of the organization and the group. And that I think is going to be what the success and longevity comes from, is it's set up to be a facilitation of actually meeting needs.
Right.
Which is really how we build community. Find the need, meet the need, have people that facilitate and take accountability for it.
Exactly. And it keeps it fresh and interesting. I think there will always be certain events that we have, the 20 under 40 award and our annual meeting. I would like to see the Laramie Volunteer Fair continue for forever. Those types of things. Our fundraiser will likely be a cornhole tournament, which we're all very excited about.
We have a lot of cornhole boards.
Yes, we're super stoked about that coming to Laramie near you in June. But we have some of those kind of standard things that we're hoping to incorporate indefinitely. Otherwise, the sky's the limit as to what we could do. It can always be shifting, just like you said, to meet needs, to keep it interesting, to bring in more members. And, it is an exclusive program. That's one thing that we haven't talked about. We do kick you out when you hit 40. And it's intended to be exclusive, but not exclusionary. We are trying to fill a gap. We're trying to meet needs in a certain area, and that we had to have some sort of cutoff. But our goal is to make that really fun. We're going to throw a 40th birthday party every year for everyone who is 40 to celebrate their involvement with LYP, to hopefully get them connected with other organizations in town that are looking to build their membership, and then we're going to kick them out.
Yeah.
But hopefully it is an experience that is valuable, that brought them a lot of growth and connection, and that they'll have good things to say about, other than they kicked me out when I turned 40.
It's a bon voyage party.
Yeah, exactly. A retirement party of
Yeah.
sorts. Yeah,
Yeah, like on to your next journey.
exactly.
So, well, thank you for being here today and taking the time to talk about the program. And thanks for all the work that you and the whole team do in putting it together, and the people that really started it. I know Tom Verploeg was very involved
Absolutely.
out of the gate. And, I think it's one of the things that we were able to breathe a little life back into that died with COVID.
Yep.
And I'm super excited to see where it goes in the future for the organization and our town.
Awesome. And thank you for having me.
Anytime.
This was awesome.
Even if I made you cry.
I mean, it's not hard. It's not hard.